because your cycles fluctuate and your hormones fluctuate, certain types of exercises work really well. And certain types of exercises are not a good idea. There's certain times of the month where if you go and lift weights, you're far more likely to get injured. So having that kind of visual calendar when you go to plan can be really helpful for planning out your exercise, your diet, your business routine. And one of the things that I was told to do that I actually really like and think that all women should do, particularly women with ADHD, is instead of planning your month at the end of the month, you plan your month with your cycles. So you plan your month right when your period starts.
ADHD Rewired, episode 356. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups, and you can learn all about our intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. You can do all of this at our website, ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Before we get started with today's episode, if you missed registration for our winter coaching groups that start on January 6th, go to the website, coachingrewired.com. We have a couple spots that just opened up. I'll tell you more about that during the break, but there are 2 spots left in section 1 and 1 spot left in section 2. Go to coachingrewired.com and click on the red button for the next steps. Also, I'm announcing something new during the first ad break. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. We have another mastermind session that we are doing today. We have our admin from ARC 21, our 21st season of our coaching and accountability groups. And returning to the hot seat is Natalie Stark. So Natalie is going to set up what her topic is about. But before we do, let's just go around and say hello to everybody else. We have Jessica. Hello, Jessica.
Hello.
And we have Roxie.
Yeah.
And Moira.
Hi.
All right. So Natalie, share with us and listeners, what is the issue that you want to mastermind today?
Okay. So I have PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which means that my hormones are heckin' crazy in line with my cycle. Basically super depressed right before period and then almost manic afterwards tends to be how I experience it, but everybody's different. And with that comes in with like an increase in ADHD symptoms. So like for a week to 2 weeks of my month, my ADHD is like at least twice as worse, is what I'd say. And I know this happens every month. And every month I think about it and I try to work with it. And yet it seems like at least a week of my month, I just lose. Like I can't function well enough to get anything done, which is an exaggeration a bit. I get some things done, but it feels like that. And I'm doing a bunch of different stuff to try and help with it. But it just doesn't feel like enough. So I wanted to talk about it and see if we can come up with any other sort of strategies or, you know, any sort of interventions that I could do to help mitigate that.
All right. Tell us, talk a little bit about medications and how those play a part of this.
So it was actually funny enough. I had an IUD that was progesterone based and I had like real bad anger and ADHD issues almost all the time and couldn't figure it out. And then listened to your podcast with Linda Rogley. How do you say her name?
Yeah, Linda Rogley.
Rogley?
Mm-hmm.
And how she was talking about progesterone and how it can be really bad for women with ADHD. And I was like, well, I got to not have this IUD anymore. So changed the IUD to a copper one, which has no hormones in it. And instead of being like having like a normal mood like type of thing going on with my cycle, I would like be like suicidal depressive, like right before my period, and manic right after. And for a while we couldn't figure it out, and we thought maybe I had bipolar, but then we realized it corresponded with the cycle. So then I started various birth control pills to try and like level it out. And the only one that works for me that helps is a tricyclic birth control pill that I take, which means that the hormones are different each week. So there's different hormones week 1, week 2, week 3, and then just like every other birth control pack, week 4 has no hormones at all.
How long have you been on that one for?
About a year now, and I was on it from the age of 15 to 21 before I tried the IUD, because it was the only one that didn't make me feel crazy weird out of all the birth control pills when I started them at the age of 15.
And what about ADHD meds?
I am on Vyvanse, which works for me about 7 to 8 hours of the day it works.
And what about is your dosage the same during your cycle?
It's the same dosage. I'm meaning to talk to. I have an appointment coming up, and that's something I'm going to ask. I know when I asked about it in Michigan, they said they couldn't do anything. I'm in Indiana now, so maybe it's different here. I think it also just is different doctor to doctor. So we'll see what my current psych doctor who prescribes to me says when I see him in about 2 weeks. Because I'd like to have an uppage of dosage for sure. And I'm also on guanfacine and Wellbutrin, and without the guanfacine, the Vyvanse makes me really, really anxious. So I do worry about increasing the Vyvanse dose, me then also being super anxious, even if I do need the extra dosage to focus. But I want to try it anyway.
One thing you might want to explore is doing just a Google Scholar search for ADHD meds, and put in add some search queries around menstruation and all the keyword searches that would hit that, so you can potentially bring this information to the doctor, because it is relatively newer information, and not all doctors really understand the idea of changing doses based on where you are in the month. And I think that because of insurance, like that, and I'm wondering if that's what your doctor is saying, you can't like do much about if it was an issue of insurance. There might be some ways to do that if you talk to your doctor.
Yeah. I have high hopes with my current doctor. I started seeing him when he was still doing the residency. He was still doing his residency when I first started seeing him, and now he's not. So he's like a new doctor. So, and I've always liked him. So I think it'll be easier to work with him on it.
Okay. Just a couple other questions, and I want to let everybody else ask questions. Have you ever used a tracker, like a period tracker, where you can track symptoms along with your period?
Yes.
Because I know there's some apps that can do that.
I use Eve, and I love Eve, and I recommend Eve to a lot of people because it's free and it does track my moods, and it does tell me you might be weepy today, and sure enough, I will be. So it knows, but it doesn't really tell you anything ahead in advance. Right. So it's more like day of, I'm like, wow, I feel weird today. And I'll look and it'll relate. And then if it doesn't, then I get super weird about it.
I wonder how much that is the power of suggestion as well. Like, I know, like sometimes in my sleep cycle app, it'll say I got like a really low score, and I'll maybe feel more tired. I got a higher score, and I'll feel better. I'm like, how much of that was just the score I got?
That's why I don't really check it unless I feel off already.
Okay.
Because I do worry about that with me. I'm kind of like, is it hypochondriac, where you feel things that you read and stuff? Is that the right word?
Mm-hmm. I think I've heard it pronounced as hypochondriasis, which when I heard that pronunciation, I was like, that doesn't sound right. But then I heard it again somewhere else pronounced like that. So maybe it's not. I don't know. That's not the point, though. What questions, Jessica, Roxie, or Moira, do you have?
If I were getting the inside scoop on you during the worst part of it, what would I be getting?
So what happens to me my worst days hormone wise? Okay. So my worst days, you'll get a lot of me staring at the wall and moving really slowly, standing in the shower for way longer than normal. And I already stand in the shower way too long. Mixed with heightened emotions in all directions. So it's like if something makes me laugh, I'll laugh harder, but also if something makes me want to cry, I'll cry harder, type of thing. More irritable. And then just the general ADHD symptoms in general are higher. So distractibility higher, motivation lower. And the general tangents are, it's harder to not go down rabbit holes. It's harder to like do things that take more executive functioning.
Moira.
First of all, I want to totally thank you for doing this Mastermind, because when I didn't know I had ADHD, I didn't know how much my ADHD impacted my cycle. And as I've learned more, first of all, I did realize that I actually also had PMDD. I just assumed it was PMS. And I didn't know that women with ADHD tend to suffer more PMS and more PMDD than the typical population. So I'm sure this is going to resonate with a lot of women. What you described as your worst days is what was like for me when I didn't have 2 different doses over the course of the month. So like you, I'm also on Vyvanse, and I'm also on guanfacine, and I also take SSRI. And it would just be like, even though I'd taken my meds, it was like I hadn't taken my meds. Just one day, all of a sudden, it was like, did I take them? It's not working anymore. And I was able to, from basically reading and from getting some really good information, go to my doctor and ask for 2 different doses. So I take 1 dose for 14 days, and I take another dose for another 14 days. And because I'm perimenopausal, my cycle varies, so I have to track that. But so sometimes one part may be longer than the other. But it really, for me, that was the answer, because if I'm taking the wrong dose of even those 2, it doesn't work. Like if I stay on the higher dose too long into my cycle, I will feel over-medicated. I will feel jittery. I'll feel all of that. If I don't switch on, for me, it's day 14. If I don't switch to the higher dose, I'll have all the symptoms that you're talking about, and I'll be crying and I'll be overwhelmed. And so it would be nice if that, is the answer for you and you're able to get it. But if it's not, there are other things that we can consider. So I guess there really wasn't a question in there. It was really just say, I know what you're going through really sucks. And I have some other suggestions in trying to manage it, but I have a feeling Jessica probably has some questions for you.
So I'll jump in there.
Not to put you on the spot.
So I do have a question, and of course, several strategies. I do want to start by saying that fascinating that you shared, Moira, that women with ADHD tend to suffer with PMDD more. Fascinating, because I actually also have that diagnosis. So I think that's kind of interesting. There's 4 women on this podcast right now, and 3 of the 4 have a PMDD diagnosis. So, no, I don't own that diagnosis for myself. I kind of rebel against it. I refuse to let it sink into me. And maybe that's just me, being rebellious. So my question, Natalie, when I'm reading through your Mastermind, it seems to me like a lot of your motivation behind trying to solve this is really about being able to be as effective as you possibly can be in your business and not have this crazy roller coaster. So when you are planning out your month, do you keep your cycles with that same calendar or app or whatever it is that you're using?
No, that's an easy one. I should be doing that, shouldn't I?
Problem solved. Episode over. I'm just kidding.
That's it. There we go. Podcast over.
So it feels like you should, right? I mean, let's not should on ourselves, but I did go ahead and I pre-apologized to everyone listening who can't see this, but I kind of just used a mock-up of what kind of works for me when I'm tracking my cycles. So for me, every single different phase is kind of a different color. And when I go into my luteal phase, that feels blue to me. It's very low energy. My ovulation is like bright pink or green.
That's like the second day of the week up until the second to last day of the second week. It's blue.
Yeah. Your luteal phase is very long.
This phase, which is, I'd rather be on my period than in the luteal phase, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's because as soon as you start bleeding, your hormones actually start rebalancing. And in fact, a lot of women don't know this, but the best time to hit the gym is like right when you're on your period, because that is when your hormones are actually most similar to a male's, and you can like really just bust it out. So
are you exercising? Natalie?
That's a good question.
I am slowly adding exercise back in per my chiropractor's recommendations, but currently all the exercises that I'm doing is like, it takes me like 20 minutes. And then I'm going on walks because I have been advised not to do any rigorous cardio yet. But my goal is to get there for sure. So I'm sure that will help.
Yeah, that's actually something else that you can, believe it or not, plan with your cycles. Because as your cycles fluctuate and your hormones fluctuate, certain types of exercises work really well. And certain types of exercises are not a good idea. There's certain times of the month where if you go and lift weights, you're far more likely to get injured. So having that kind of visual calendar when you go to plan can be really helpful for planning out your exercise, your diet, your business routine. And one of the things that I was told to do that I actually really like and think that all women should do, particularly women with ADHD, is instead of planning your month at the end of the month, you plan your month with your cycles. So you plan your month right when your period starts.
Jessica, it's so fascinating that you're saying that, because I was just sitting here thinking, we as women, I think historically had to plan our lives around our cycle. And then looking at the age of all of us, we grew up in a time where feminine hygiene products became something that the message was, you can just carry on with your life. You can just, use these products, and it's like, you can wear the white pants and go swimming and ride a horse and just carry on with all of those things, and there'll be butterflies. But the reality is that there is a whole thing that goes on in our bodies that most women are not taught about this hormonal cycle that we go through. And taking that into account is massive, but not only is it massive, when you have ADHD, all the sort of planning things, like I can remember for most of my life, when my period arrived would be a surprise because I wasn't paying attention to it, even though it was regular. And I would get paranoid and all these things would happen and I would be surprised by it. So the notion of taking these things into account and actually trying to help structure our lives around it is probably the biggest thing. And I have a question about that for Natalie, but I don't want to, if you've got more, I don't want to.
I do want to dive a little bit more into the planning because it really sounds like this is not just an issue of time management. It's an issue of timing management. So what I want to do is take a quick break because it's about that time. And then we will come back and continue. Insert a clever transition statement right here. Support for this podcast comes from the ADHD reWired coaching community, which includes our intensive coaching and accountability groups and our alumni membership community. I told you at the start of the podcast that we have a few spots left for our winter coaching sessions. After our last registration event, we filled beyond capacity. So we offered 6 people a chance to join Moira Mabin of the soon-to-launch ADHD-Friendly Lifestyle podcast, who we've heard here on the live Q&As several times. We offered 6 people the opportunity to join Moira at 6 a.m. Pacific, as Moira has joined the team as a group facilitator. Because apparently there are folks who really like that time of day. Moira is one of those people. I am not. So for those of you who still want to join us this January, starting January 6th, go to coachingrewired.com and click on that red button for your next steps. If you are looking ahead to spring and you would love to do an early morning session with Moira, we will be offering that this spring along with our regular session times that I will be leading. Make sure to go to coachingrewired.com and click on that green button to get on our spring interest list. Or if you want to join us next week, go right now to coachingrewired.com and follow the instructions there. We survived 2020. Let's get back on track this 2021. Go to coachingrewired.com. That's coachingrewired.com. If you have ever experienced the power of a body double to help you stay focused and on track with your work, then you're going to love what we are building right now and are pushing hard to launch at the very end of January. I've been thinking about doing this for years. In fact, 6 years ago, I purchased the domain that I have been sitting on until now, adultstudyhall.com. We've been doing Adult Study Hall and the coaching and accountability groups since 2014. Adult Study Hall is where you work together on Zoom, doing the important but often boring stuff, or the stuff that I like to call the important stuff. We are launching this brand new and affordable Adult Study Hall membership, so you'll never have to work alone again. And now, for the first time ever, you won't have to go through our coaching and accountability groups to be a part of our Adult Study Halls. Right now, we are busy building it out, hiring facilitators who will be guiding you during your work sessions, setting up calendars, creating new Zoom rooms, and doing a whole lot of stuff on the back end. So while it's being built, I want to give you the chance to become a founding member. We're going to be offering the very first 100 founding members 50% off their membership for the life of their membership. Now, you could wait until we add a few more bells and whistles and get all the kinks out for only $19.99 a month, or become a founding member and you can join us and lock in the price of $9.99 a month. As long as you stay an active member, your membership fee will never go up, and this price will be limited to our first 100 founding members. We will have more information in the weeks ahead. If you want to become a founding member, let us know by going to adultstudyhall.com. That's adultstudyhall.com. And we are back. Still giggling from the awkward transition statement before the break. So we were talking about timing management. So this, and I'm kind of struck too about, as someone who's led all of these groups and facilitates stuff around planning. As I grew up at two sisters, this thing just as a clinical social worker by training, like this conversation doesn't faze me as you might think it would for maybe a typical man. But I'm also really it's an important perspective to be aware of when helping, just as a coach, helping women with planning. It feels by not addressing it, it's being really blind to a huge issue that is influencing so many lives. So I appreciate being part of this conversation. So thank you. All right. Who's next?
I'm happy to jump back in more. We're talking about timing and not being an issue of time management, more an issue of timing. So another piece of the puzzle here is that with those hormonal changes actually come a different set of strengths that can very much apply to your business. So, for example, when you're in your ovulation phase, right? That's a time where you're the most attractive, you're feeling the most attractive, you have the most energy. It's really good for you to go and connect with clients, do Facebook Lives, anything that's interactive. When you're in your first part of your luteal phase, you're really detail oriented. You're really, really good at organizing and picking up on things that are out of place. So like dealing with your business finances and stuff like that. It's a really, really good time to do those things. So I'm wondering, Natalie, would it be helpful if you incorporated the visual calendar with the colorings and maybe some notes about which tasks would go best in which phase? Do you think that that's something that would be helpful for you?
Yes. I'm looking at, so believe it or not, Jessica and I have talked about this before. And she sent me this neat little cycle syncing chart thing by Cycle Lab, I guess. And it has all of that on, like little descriptors under each of the phases. And it's like I've had this and I look at it once in a while, like this I need to incorporate. But I think, just physically writing it into my month, that is what I need to do to put it in my planner rather than just have it on my desk where I notice it once in a while. I think that's exactly what I need to do. And it's funny, the detail thing about the luteal phase, because it's like the first part of it, I get sadder, but I do have the details better. But then towards that second part of the luteal phase, it's like I lose everything altogether. And like I was in high school, which I started my period when I was like 11. I was in 5th grade when I started my period. But in high school, I worked better, like on my period and like the few days before my period. I found that like I had more of a I don't give a fuckery. So like I was less annoyed by having to do homework. Like I'd just be like, well, we're just going to do it. And then I'd do it. But weird. Now, it was weird. And now that I'm like in my late 20s, I'm 27, it doesn't feel like that anymore. And I do wonder like what that's all about, because I used to be like, I'm on my period and right before my period so I can get work done. And I don't have that anymore. And that's more like right after my period. It's just, I can't figure it out. Like,
you're right, Moira.
So I know in like puberty, which is the time you're talking about, your hormones are different and your estrogen is actually much higher. Similarly to when women are pregnant, they have higher levels of estrogen. You're still taking birth control that has progesterone in it. And I'm looking at some of the research here, and it does say that estrogen is clearly effective in relieving some of these symptoms, whereas progesterone is ineffective and it might even worsen. And the problems may not be with the level of estrogen in the blood, but they're more likely related to the estrogen receptors. And so that even if your estrogen level reads as normal, you might be actually needing more estrogen as a way to manage that. And so that's like, there is still some medical that you could be looking into. And whether or not this, you're like we mentioned the stimulant, but there isn't the studies yet to show that, but there's enough clinicals. And I actually have an article here when Eric was talking about finding stuff written by Dr. Patricia Quinn, who's one of the big gurus in women with ADHD. So that's one thing to consider. I have a question about your self-care, but if there's anything about what I've just said, if you want to comment on.
No, that's fascinating. I just wrote that down and circled it. Estrogen receptors, question mark. Okay. Because
and then maybe you're going to look at that and be like, why did I write estrogen receptors with 2 questions?
Receptors low question.
I'm going to send you the article. It's called Hormonal Fluctuations and the Influence of Estrogen in the Treatment of Women with ADHD.
And Moira, if you put that in the chat, we can link it to the show notes.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think I said that very quickly.
And then I'm on, and the progesterone is not great. And I know it's not helping me. Right. But there's estrogen in the tricyclic, which is like part of the reason it helps me. Right. And it's like without it, I get full blown suicidal. So it's like, this is what I have right now. And I'd rather be kind of angry and loopy than suicidal, Right. So I'm like, if there's something I can do instead.
Look at you prioritizing.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Go you. But you're right. Like that was one of my questions is there something else? Because, I am not a doctor, that could be helpful for you.
My one guy said there wasn't, but then it's like, there probably is. There probably is something.
Well, there's like estrogen, like I do not know enough about this area, and it's an area that I need to learn more about for myself, but there are estrogen patches, like there are different. So I don't know, again, because I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
As Jessica mentioned, your mastermind was written with the notion of being productive and the expectations you have for yourself of being productive at this level, and then you're comparing it to another level when you're not feeling as functional. In looking at that planning piece, have you considered taking those things into account and changing what you're expecting of yourself? Not that you're necessarily being less productive, but more along the lines of what are the tasks that are better suited for that time frame?
That's exactly what I was trying to convey in that mastermind. I don't expect to do the same amount of stuff. I really don't. It's just that I don't want to do nothing.
Well, not just quantity of work, but also the types of work.
Yeah, the types of work you can change. It's like there's things that I feel I could probably do, but it's almost like I can't. It's like I can't figure out what those things are.
Flip it on its head. What are the things at different times just feel like are so hard for you to do? Start there.
At different times, like just
so
in
like
general,
like during your cycle, right? Like, are there activities that are just like, this task just seems impossible?
I mean, most of the things that are really high EF, really high executive function, not writing. I've always liked writing, but like balancing a budget, No. Research? No. I could listen to an audiobook, but I couldn't like look things up and like dig around and find things. Like things like that are harder.
During the first half of your luteal phase or the second half?
The second half.
Okay.
Right
so
before.
You're pretty typical. You're like super normal, actually. And it's interesting that you like writing during that time because they actually say that it's a really good time to journal and reflect.
Is it all kinds of writing?
I wouldn't know. I can't answer that because I did my hardest like writing like in grad school and whatever was when I still had the progesterone IUD. So I'm not sure if I could do like a research based writing, but like I do some of my best like slam poetry stuff around that time.
What about creating like content for your website?
I probably could write that because it's more like writing about yourself and what you're good at. I could do that. Okay. It's not as
writing about like describing services.
Yeah. I could do that.
So it might be helpful to think of like almost like two, just in a very sort of simplified way, two categories of like you can sort of label it however you want to, but the activities that are really good during a certain period of time and activities that might feel really challenging during another period of time.
Yeah.
And then sort of kind of plugging those into your calendar, like, and overlay that period tracker on your calendar.
Now I use I have a written planner.
Okay.
I have a paper planner. And I feel like I can't get all of this in my paper planner.
Okay.
So I'm going to need to figure that out a bit. And I'm using this more in terms of like my business type stuff. And since now I'm doing the business more full time rather than what I used to be doing, I could probably put this stuff in my ClickUp calendar and just leave my paper planner as is, because I want to start using that for more like appointments and plans around. But I still haven't gotten there yet. So I don't know if I can promise that. I'm like, what am I going to do here? Because I don't like, let me show you like a good week in my planner. Look at this chicken scratch nonsense that happens. And this is helpful for me. This works for me, but I can't get much else in it. Like,
okay. So everything's broken down into what, 30-minute or? Not even. I write the time block in.
So like it can be like 2:15 to 3 takes the same amount of space as 12:45 to 2:15. I just write what goes in that box there.
Do you do well when you can sort of visually, spatially see things?
I've never been a very visual, spatial person.
Okay, and then I think that it's probably really important then that you have a calendar that represents time precisely and not like where that inch on your calendar, it could be an hour, it could be 3 hours, it could be half, like that can be problematic.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying that it doesn't the space doesn't tend to help me from what I've noticed.
Okay.
When I make a 3 hour period, the 3 hour period, that hasn't usually helped me. But I don't know.
Jessica, are you smiling because you said 3 hour period?
I was.
Okay.
No,
and then I was wondering if it would be like bad form if I made like a joke about the planner pad.
Just run with it. We've heard it all before.
Oh my God.
Natalie, with the one that you've got, would it work even just having like the Jessica's color coding running along the top? Because each column a day?
Yeah, each column's a day. And there's the monthlies. There's the month as well as in there. Like this is September.
Because for me, the color coding on top of each day on your daily one would be enough to remind me like, okay, I need to like put on the brakes when I'm looking ahead to planning stuff.
Yeah.
Like I need more space here. I need more time here, or
I could put the color code, the color key on the wall. Cause I worry, I have enough space. Like here, if you look at this Saturday, Sunday, there's a little space at the top where they sometimes put the holiday, right? But I could put a color there for sure.
Can I ask you guys if you could share maybe pictures of your calendars that you're using for your cycles so we can put in the show notes? If you can send those to Barb so we can get those in the show notes. Because I think a lot of people would like to see them.
I don't have one at the moment, but what I do is I put a P with a question mark when I think it's going to land. And then 2 weeks later than that, I have increased dose. And then I have it as a recurring thing. And then I just update it each month.
Wasn't the P with the question mark the thing that would like explode in like Mario Brothers 3?
I've always thought video games are a complete waste of time. I know I'm alienating a large group of people, but I don't know.
Just a question mark. I don't remember the P being.
Oh, I remember the question mark.
There was like a P that was like for power or something.
The power ups were different. The power ups were just a P. You're mashing them together.
I need him. He would know this answer. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, where do you want to take this, Natalie?
This has all been really, really good. I would I think more like self-care planning and stuff like that. This is going to really help in itself, but like other outside of the box, less planning type of things would be great too.
All right. Well, we will take a quick break and we will be right back. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from our patrons who support us over on Patreon. How would you like to get ad-free episodes of ADHD Rewired each week on your current podcast player for just $5 a month? Starting this January, we will be offering ad-free episodes to our $5 a month and up patrons. I will let you know when that is live. And patrons who give $25 a month, you can join me on the fourth Tuesday of every month for a group coaching call on Zoom at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. You can support ADHD Rewired even if you don't care about the perks. Maybe you're one of those people who gets so much value from this podcast that you feel called to say thank you with a monthly financial contribution. And if you're listening to this podcast on December 29th, today's my 40th birthday. So it's a great day to become a patron. It just takes a minute. Go to ADHDrewired.com and click on the Patreon tab at the top of the page. That's ADHDrewired.com and click on the Patreon tab at the top of the page. And thanks. If you are new to the podcast, welcome. Check out our other podcasts we have here on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. We got one for parents and educators called ADHD Essentials. We have another one called Hacking Your ADHD. And this January, be on the lookout for the ADHD-friendly lifestyle and ADHD Diversified. And either this week or next week, I will be on ADHD Essentials talking about planning your year. And I also share something on there that I haven't shared anywhere else. And you can join all of us here from the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network for our first live Q&A of 2021 on Tuesday, January 12th at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. We do these every second Tuesday of the month at the same time. To register, go to ADHDrewired.com/events. That's ADHDrewired.com/events. And we'll see you there. And have a happy new year. All right, we are back. One thing I do want to just to say for listeners, I know that with Jessica, who is apparently done tons of research on this topic, what she's sharing is from her personal research, and she's not a doctor. So I think that's just an important kind of caveat that we should probably throw in there so the lawyers don't get upset with us.
Thanks for that, Eric. I agree. Definitely not a doctor, just lots and lots of reading and trial and error.
I think there was a joke about that, like not a doctor, just have a mild form of hypochondriasis or something like that. All right. So self-care. We know that self-care is one of the things that I talk about in coaching groups, that self-care is the bridge between rewind that. Planning is the bridge between self-care, and my brain just went, you're still talking? Should we leave it in? Should we leave it in? We should leave it in. Okay. Sorry. I'm tired. It's Monday, and I didn't sleep super well this weekend. Anyways, what am
self-care.
Someone try to say what I'm trying to say for me.
Self-care.
It's the thing I say. The bridge. It's the
planning.
Planning is the bridge between self-care and
between productivity and self-care.
Productivity and self-care.
So
there we go.
Easy.
It takes a village.
Planning is the bridge between productivity and self-care.
There it is. Speaking of self-care, I need to go to sleep earlier tonight. Natalie, so tell me what your self-care is right now. What do you probably have an idea of what you need more of?
I need more outside time. I need to go outside more.
Moira's doing a happy dance.
I need to exercise more, but we've already talked about that and how I'm increasing that. My sleep has been relatively okay lately for the first time ever, knock on wood, because I'm kind of actually a lot like Eric in how I am with my sleeping, and I do a lot of like sleep procrastination, but I've gotten really good at going to bed and getting up at the same time. Now that I don't have to get up for work like I used to, I've just picked times that felt good and I'm sticking to them. So, but I don't sleep as well.
Okay. Well, let's put a pin in the quality of sleep. Let's think of the dominoes. What if we focused on one of these things? You talked about getting outside more, exercise. Right, what it would be the thing that makes other things easier, or maybe has the biggest impact down the road?
What a great question. I'm not sure. Because I also didn't get to like showering in general, grooming.
Okay.
Is also a thing that I like. I like my showers are really key for me, but I hate getting into the shower or getting out of the shower. That transition just sucks, even though I know I love the shower.
Are you a coffee drinker?
No. I used to be. I haven't really drank coffee since I started ADHD meds, like 2 years ago. I sometimes drink tea, but I haven't drank tea since it was cold last, which was a while ago.
Okay. I'm trying to think of like ways that you might be able to sort of sequentially like set up one thing that make it easier to do the next thing and then the next thing.
I'm trying to think too. At 6 p.m. on a Monday.
And surprise, everybody, it's also her luteal phase.
It is today. It's like the start of the worst part of it is today. Not helpful.
So this is the sound of the luteal phase.
Silence and confusion.
So let me offer a resource and also just a thought, which is, within our community, like as ADHDers, one of the things that we're constantly focused on is like, let's work with our brain rather than against it, right? Let's engineer our environment to fit our brain rather than getting our brain to fit into a box that it doesn't fit into. So self-care and cycle syncing, following that natural ebb and flow and honoring that part of your body, resting when your body wants to rest, pushing when your body can push. You'll find the more you follow that, the easier it is to do those self-care pieces, the more energy you have. And when you know you're going to ebb and flow like that, it's also less frustrating because you go, oh, this is my week that I get to read books and journal and be creative and come up with ideas and be left alone. So those are thoughts. And then the resource. There is a phenomenal woman who I have had the pleasure of being friends with myself. Her name is Stasha Washburn. She is the period coach. And so to tie into your business, she does actually have a program. I think it's called Your Business, Your Flow. It's more around planning, like doing business planning around your period. But she also just has an awesome community on Facebook that I think is called the Red Tent. And just all kinds of other resources. And I'm happy to pull those up too, Eric, so you could put those in the show notes because she's been phenomenally helpful for me. So
the Red Tent is a thing. Like it's a cultural thing about women and having their menstruation. So that's what that's linked to. Eric, I saw you take a breath there. Is it okay to ask Natalie questions? Okay, thanks.
Yes, I'm still breathing.
I just piggybacking on what Jessica said about the types of your self-care, and I put some things in the chat because I know you mentioned in your mastermind a bit about nutrition, but one I didn't know where you were at with like saying no to things and numbing in technology in that time, like maybe getting stuck with things and getting stuck.
Well, it's like when you're in it and then you don't know, but as soon as you said it, I'm like, yes, I do that. Yeah, no. I definitely numb more during the luteal phase. And I do get more lost in just things in general. So if I play a video game, I'll play it longer and have less control over stopping. I recently deleted Facebook off of my phone, and that has been immensely helpful in general. So I'm trying to like eliminate some things, right? And so that's definitely a thing that I do. And I have dermatillomania as well, like the skin picking thing. It gets worse as well. I've been way better with it as of late. I'd almost like call myself like somewhat like in remission, but like right before my period, I will get lost in the mirror. It's like, I won't be able to tear myself away. Somebody else can help me. Like my boyfriend will come in and be like, you don't want to be doing that. I'll be like, you're right. And then I'll be able to leave. But like,
yeah. So that's where building in those, I think, lifestyle and environmental modifications that you use at certain times can really be helpful so that you're not setting yourself up for situations that are going to be harder. You're kind of like, if you were a little girl and you were being very kind to you, what would you do in those certain situations, certain times to make it easier for yourself?
Natalie, did you say you're on Wellbutrin?
Yeah.
There is some documentation around Wellbutrin and compulsive addictive behaviors that you may want to look into.
No way. Well, it was worse before my Wellbutrin. I feel my picking was worse. But I'll definitely look into that.
And I only just know that because I take Wellbutrin, and I think it was last winter, was 1 or 2 winters ago, I sort of proactively increased my dose to get ahead of seasonal affective disorder because it's like clockwork. It's what happens to me. And I found myself getting into some sort of compulsive behaviors for sort of hours on end, and that sort of the way you described that really resonated. And then when I brought the dose back down, it immediately subsided.
I am on the lowest dose of Wellbutrin for somebody who isn't also on SSRIs. So like there is a lower available, but they only give the lower to people who are already on SSRIs. I'm not on any SSRIs. So
about outside time, where you work, do you have windows?
now I do. I just moved my desk a week and a half ago.
That's
So-
big. I had an office for many years that had no windows, and never again. It is like if you have any kind of like issues with like depression or anxiety, like working in a windowless space all day, bad idea.
Yeah, no, it's been super helpful. I'm right in front of two very big, beautiful windows
Very
now.
nice.
So
All right. What commitments do you want to make here?
all right. I wrote some stuff down. I'm definitely going to talk to my doctor, my psych doctor, about getting an increased dose of Vyvanse for half of the month. I also have coming up an appointment for my yearly with my PCP, and I'm going to ask about estrogen stuff. And I don't have a gyno because she does women visits as well, my PCP. But if she thinks that I need to go to somebody else, I will line that up. I am going to commit to putting my cycle in my planner somehow. I want Jessica, if she could send me a picture of what colors and stuff you use, because maybe I'll just go ahead and model it after yours. And I'm going to like make a key and color it in. And I'm going to figure out how to write the different cycle descriptions somewhere in my planner. Because I think that is critically important, but I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to fit it in yet.
Big sticky notes.
Oh, sticky notes will work. What? See, this is what I mean. It's like a week from now, I'll be able to think, oh yeah, just put a sticky note. But today I'm like, where do I write it?
And it's, and on one hand, it's like very, very typical for ADHD. And it's also like amplified, I think, by the hormonal fluctuations that you're experiencing.
Yes.
It's like there are days where I can walk into my house and it's a mess and it's like easy to organize and clean it up. There are other days I just kind of walk in circles like a dog chasing his tail because I have no idea like where to start or what to do. Or I'll pick something up and I'll just go from room to room with it and it just ends up in another pile somewhere else because I just can't, like my brain is like, So yeah, it's kind of like ADHD on hard mode.
That's what it is.
That's
It's
nice.
ADHD on hard mode. This is...
Other than sticky notes, an awesome way to do sticky notes, particularly for books, they have these pocket sleeves that are index card size that have a hardcore stick, won't ever come off stick glue on the back of them. You can stick that inside and you can fit a different index card for each part of your cycle and just slide it right in the pocket sleeve and it'll just always be there for you.
I'm not understanding how that would be used.
Same.
Moira, I wasn't either. I was like, I want to see pictures because it sounds like it could be interesting, but I need
more
pictures. All right, so I think we're going to have a lot of pictures on this episode of the show notes. So check it out, ADHDrewired.com/whatever episode number this is. Just, or just go to the website.
/periods.
Maybe. I don't know. All right.
The perimenopause and the menopausal version is coming to a podcast near you.
Natalie, Jessica, Roxie, and Moira, thank you very much. And I hope this was helpful for everyone listening. And I want to give kudos also to all the men who listened to the entire episode.
True that. Yes. This is important stuff to know for the women in your life and the people in your life who have cycles. Also, I wanted to plug myself.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, we can't end before I plug myself.
Oh my God.
Because the last mastermind I did was about my business, and now I like have a website and a phone number and all of that stuff. Because it's Queer Spectrum Life Coaching. Yep.
Say it again.
QueerSpectrumLifeCoaching.com, and almost all social medias, it's exactly Queer Spectrum Life Coaching. And you can email me. We
also say, and we'll let you give you the email address in a second, because you can't hear it on the podcast, but Roxie's face was just bright red. You can email Natalie at
queerspectrumlifecoaching.com.
Natalie.
Yes.
Natalie, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening, and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find summaries and additional resources for each episode. You can apply to our free and secret Facebook community. You can learn more about ADHD Rewired's intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups, and sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content you won't get anywhere else. It's all at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click the Patreon button. If you're a regular listener and you're still listening to my voice, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron through our Patreon page. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to listeners, but it is not free to produce. And patrons get really cool perks. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHDrewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. You can also subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube. And you can subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube and see select interviews and some other videos I've posted. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends and your family and your clients, as well as your coaches, therapists, and doctors. And if you're a coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader, and you would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at my website, ADHDrewired.com. And if you're a member of CHAD or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this podcast. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. You know, you might be the person that turns somebody on to a podcast for the very first time. And if you really love this episode, please consider hitting share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I count on you to help me spread the message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and to help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or any other podcast app that accepts ratings and reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe on this podcast on your podcast app so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Not sure where to start? In no particular order. Check out Atomic Habits by James Clear, The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk, 10% Happier, and Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics. These are both by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions and Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Vaden. The Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. Do you have trouble asking for help? Listen to The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. It's one of the best produced audiobooks I've ever heard. If you're looking for something a little bit more, say, magical, I unexpectedly fell in love with the Harry Potter series. And I don't usually listen to those kinds of books, and I loved it. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brené Brown bus yet, check out Brené Brown's books, starting with The Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, The Power of Vulnerability, And if you're an entrepreneur or leader in any capacity, check out her 2018 book, Dare to Lead. And Brene still is my most wanted guest, so if you know Brene, and you would be so kind to make that connection for me, I would be really, really grateful. You know who else I would like to have on the show? You. Click the podcast tab at ADHDrewired.com and then click the Be a Guest button at the top of that page and schedule a 15-minute pre-interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, keep growing, and keep connecting. Self-care is not selfish, and no matter what gets done or doesn't get done, at the end of the day, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.